Bills training camp is right around the corner. Buffalo will head to St. John Fisher soon enough to help us get ready for training camp. We are breaking down some of Buffalo's biggest storylines ahead of the 2025 season. I'm Maddy Glab, and I'm joined by voice of the Bills, Chris Brown. Chris, as we look at this team as a whole, we're going to focus on today where Buffalo's defense will look most different in 2025. The defense welcomed 19 new faces to its side of the ball. The defensive line saw the most turnover with 10 new players added to the mix. Last year, the team as a whole had 39 sacks, which tied for 18th, also ranked 20th in terms of pressure rate. And when asked about the defense, defensive coordinator Bobby Babich said, in terms of our defensive line, we know areas that we need to be more consistent in this upcoming season. And the new players, we added guys who can flat out rush. So looking at the defensive line, how do you believe it will be revamped for 2025?
Yeah, we've seen both veteran additions with Joey Bosa, Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi, an influx of youth with the draft choices, TJ Sanders, Landon Jackson, Deion Walker. I realize there have been other additions through the course of the offseason, but those are the main ones. So just from a newcomer perspective, that's half a dozen right there who are likely to be on the 53-man roster come early September, recognizing the fact that Ogunjobi and Hoyt are going to miss the first 6 games. So maybe the look of the roster at the outset of the season is a little different than what we're anticipating. But that's 6 out of what is usually a maximum of 10 players that you carry on the roster on the defensive line. That's more than half the unit is going to look different. And so I think that in and of itself is going to require a gelling of sorts at training camp to pull the whole thing together. But the biggest difference from a performance standpoint, I think, is going to be size and speed. You add the size in the draft with those 3 behemoths that you took in the middle rounds, in Walker, in Jackson, in Sanders, and then I think you add speed and explosiveness with Bosa and Hoyt, who have suddenness at the snap, explosion, and can get up the field and put a threat on the quarterback.
We saw what the Philadelphia Eagles did in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. It was powered by their defensive line, and the additions that Buffalo made to their defensive line, well, it's not exactly like what Philly will look like. You add that length and speed and power that you talk about that can hopefully get to the quarterback a lot quicker than they did last season. Another position group who has seen some turnover is the cornerbacks. Now, speaking to Bobby Babich about position battles, Babich said every single position is an open competition. But one that a lot of people have their eyes on is the cornerback 2 spot. We know Christian Benford started in a cornerback spot last year. We assume he'll be there again this season, so the eyes are on cornerback 2. There's new players and some familiar faces who will be competing for that job. In terms of new players, the Bills drafted a first-rounder in Max Harrison, and then the familiar faces are Dane Jackson and Tre'Davious White, who are in their second stints with Buffalo. So when you look at the guys competing, how do you expect cornerback play to improve this season?
Well, the best thing that you have is more viable options. You've mentioned some of them already. If you look at last year, behind Benford and Rousseau Douglas, who were the starters outside, you had a lot of inexperience in terms of proven depth behind them. That is not a problem anymore because of Trey White and Dane Jackson being in the fold. They may not be starters, but they offer you valuable depth if you need to turn to it. That makes you a better overall unit. And then the 3 defensive backs that they drafted adds much-needed speed and athleticism. And look, Max Hairston might be the only guy that's ready to start at the outset of the season, but the upside that Dorian Strong and Jordan Hancock give you probably makes you a better unit in the second half of the season when they've got their feet under them, they're more familiar with the system, and if they're needed to contribute, they can.
We heard from Babich during OTAs. He was asked of Max Harrison and what they've seen out of Harrison so far early on in a sample size. And Babich said, we're seeing him speed up because the game is starting to slow down. What we're giving him, he's starting to understand. I thought that was a big statement by Babich.
Well, yeah, and because I think we know that the requisite physical skill set is clearly there for Hairston. I mean, that's one of the main reasons he's a number 1 draft pick. But it's the processing, right, that we always talk about with rookies. How quick on the uptake are they? The fact that he's demonstrating the ability to process quicker, which allows him to play faster here in the OTA periods and minicamp, I think speaks volumes. If that's happening before he even gets to training camp, it's an encouraging sign for sure.
Those are the two position groups who will look newest in 2025. But what about the defense as a whole? There's several new parts to it if we look at it in its entirety. Bobby Babich is in his second year as defensive coordinator. He spoke about all those firsts last year, not being first this year, feeling more comfortable in that role. Last year's identity on defense was all about creating takeaways. They ranked third in the NFL, doing it 32 times. And you have a lot of new coaches, a senior defensive assistant in Ryan Nielsen, an assistant defensive line coach, a new nickel coach. How will these changes shift Buffalo's identity on defense?
Yeah, I think it's more of an overarching thing, and the clear area that needed improvement was the pass rush, and I think they are going to be more effective in getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks without having to blitz. So on third down last year, Buffalo blitzed at the fourth highest rate in the league, 44%, because they couldn't generate pressure just rushing their front four. If it left the defense with only 6, sometimes 5 in coverage, and even then they couldn't get off the field, as evidenced by their rank of 29th in the league on third down defense. So the investment up front to get more pressure rushing 4, combined with the improved talent and depth at corner that we just discussed, should lead to more hurried throws, more quarterback hits, more sacks for Buffalo's defense, and if the quarterback does manage to get the ball off, more opportunities for INTs.
When you think about the opportunities for INTs, are you expecting a better pass rush to create more takeaways in terms of the number compared to last year?
Well, it's possible. I mean, 32 is a fat number. But I will say this. In the Sean McDermott era, Buffalo has consistently ranked high in the takeaway department. And in many of the years in which McDermott has been the head coach in this regime, they've also been near the top 10 in sacks. It fell off last year. They recognized it as an area that needed to be addressed. I feel they've addressed it. Now let's see if the coaching staff can pull it together and have players produce the numbers that they're looking for.
We spoke about some of these new faces who will be a part of the mix in 2025. And then there's several players who were on the roster last season who are expected to make a jump this season, have a bigger role. When you look at the defense, who are you expecting to make a jump?
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of pivoted and went in a different direction here because I think this guy has already been an impact player for them, but I believe Greg Rousseau is going to reach a Pro Bowl level of play this season. As we know, he led the team in sacks, quarterback hits, tackles for loss, and forced fumbles last season. I think he reaches double-digit sacks this season, makes his first Pro Bowl, because I think with the attention on Joey Bosa on the other side, it's going to afford him more one-on-one opportunities. I think he has 10, 12 sacks this year.
He had a lot of quarterback hits. He had a good amount of sacks last season. Rousseau taking another step forward. I think Bills Mafia would love that. I think safety Cole Bishop is going to take a jump in his second season as an NFL player. Bishop had a sample size of starts last season, just 4, because Damar Hamlin won that starting job. But being back in the building for OTAs, the coaches talked about Cole Bishop and how he has a better understanding for the defense in his second season. Things are slowing down, so he's starting to play faster. Bishop also spent a lot of time in the weight room this offseason. Our head coach, Sean McDermott, said he's been proud of the way that Bishop has spent time and put an emphasis on getting bigger this offseason. So putting those things together, I know there's going to be a battle for that safety position, but I believe he'll have a better season in the second year.
Yeah, I like it. I cannot disagree with you. He spent most of the winter here. Him and Taylor Rapp were joined at the hip all off season. So I believe that those two were conscious of the fact that, look, Bishop could challenge for the starting role with Damar Hamlin. That's going to be a fierce competition in training camp. And I think if that does pan out and Bishop earns the starting job to be the tandem with Rapp, the work that they put in together here this winter, just running through drills themselves on the field, hopefully affords them on-field chemistry so they can kind of hit the ground running going into the regular season.
Bishop was a high draft pick too. Remember the type of play that he had in college ball. He was a safety who could roam, who could line up on the line of scrimmage, who could blitz a quarterback and take him down. So I'm excited to see him put those types of skills together at the NFL level. We want to thank you for tuning in to us breaking down some of the biggest storylines ahead of training camp. Our training camp sponsors are Ticketmaster and Connors and Ferris. We will see you all at St. John Fisher in July.